The female lead reflects on the days when people make mistakes on a random whim, while an aristocratic-looking young man appears somewhere else. She wonders why she keeps seeing those eyes, brushing it off as just another passing thing. Then she holds her head, wondering in despair what on earth went wrong with her. She looks back at her day, which was the absolute worst. She missed the subway and was late for work. Then a sudden rainstorm hit, and a truck splashed her with muddy water. To top off her misery, her phone fell and completely shattered, and the repair cost is way too high. She thinks about asking her parents for help but backs out because she worked so hard to live independently. On top of all that, a clothes rack she had just set up in her room collapses. Feeling like her day couldn't possibly get any worse, she goes to open her room door. She's shocked to find the young man from the beginning of the story inside her room, wondering where he came from. Completely flustered, she steps back in panic. She tries to call the police, but remembers her phone is broken. She tells him not to come any closer while he calmly steps forward. Panicking, she wonders how he even got in, certain no one was there just a moment ago. He notices she's trembling, but reassures her he doesn't mean to threaten her. He calmly steps closer and asks her to calm down, then introduces himself as Leandros Julian Therion Etosina, assuring her he won't hurt her. She finds his name weird and asks what kind of name that is. He tells her he was on his way to a ceremony to give a victory speech after a long, grueling war, but his carriage suddenly shook, and he felt like he was falling somewhere. When he woke up, he found himself here, and asks her again what exactly this place is. She calms herself down and thinks over the situation, concluding there's nowhere to hide and he just appeared out of nowhere. She notices his strange clothes make him look like he popped out of thin air. She describes his outfit as flashy and decorated with confusing pins, and his way of speaking sounds just like a comic book character. She tells him he's misunderstanding something, since there's no emperor in their era and no recent wars. Confused, he asks what she means, then asks for the year according to the imperial calendar. She replies that they are in the 21st century, and there's no such thing as an imperial calendar. Completely shocked, he finds her words impossible. She suggests he sit down, saying she finds the situation just as hard to believe as he does, and they both need some time to process their thoughts. Stunned, he wonders if he really traveled to another world. She answers that that's the most likely case, though she barely believes it herself. He asks about her relative calmness, so she tells him she almost fainted from shock at first. But she explains she's faster than most people at accepting reality, so there's no point in just sitting around in a daze. He decides to properly introduce himself again, explaining that he's the second son of the ducal family of Etosina, and its legitimate heir. She sarcastically wonders if it's like the Grand Duke of the North in web novels, while he asks about her facial expression, to which she replies to just ignore it. She searches her laptop for the ducal family of Etosina, but finds zero info. She asks him for any other clues like names of people or places, while he looks at the laptop with curiosity. She explains to him that it's a laptop, then loses her patience and tells him to focus on the clues. He tells her he's from the Lavitan Empire, a nation bordered by the sea with fertile land. She searches for the empire's name but gets no results again. She concludes that if he were a normal historical figure, there would be some info on him, confirming he really came from another world. She stares into his eyes for a moment, admiring their unusual color that almost draws her in. Then she blames herself for thinking about such things at a time like this. He notices her staring and asks why, then realizes he's only been talking about himself. She introduces herself as Miri Takahashi, explaining that a lot of people share her last name. He's shocked to learn that tens of thousands of people share her surname, wondering if she's from a noble family. She laughs and tells him there might have been nobles in the distant past, but they don't have a class system anymore. Feeling tired, she says she has to sleep because she has work tomorrow. She apologizes for the sudden exhaustion that hit her right after feeling relieved. She tells him she's going to bed first because of school, a term he doesn't understand, asking if it means academy. She answers that it's pretty much like that, and they'll finish talking tomorrow. He asks where he's supposed to sleep since there's only one bed in the room. In the end, she couldn't sleep a wink all night. She feels bad making him sleep on the floor, but she notices he got some rest, while she couldn't fall asleep until dawn. The next day at her university, she thinks there's still a lot to teach him, but she feels she covered the basics and that he can probably handle his own food. She decides to buy him some clothes on her way back home. Upon returning, she calls out to him but finds no one. She anxiously wonders if he went back to his world. Suddenly, he appears shirtless, telling her she's late and that he's been waiting for her. Later, he's seen watching TV with intense focus, looking like a little kid in her eyes. She notices the clothes she bought him look a bit tight on him. He expresses his amazement at this world full of wonders, asking if this is a movie. She explains that a movie is like a play, but it moves inside a screen, which he finds amazing. He says this world feels like the magical lands he read about in books. He describes her world as overflowing with mystery. Then he asks her age, noting she doesn't look much older than him, He tells her he just celebrated his 19th birthday and was born in March. She quickly calculates and realizes he turns 20 this year. When he tells her this enthusiastically, she smiles a meaningful smile. She tells him she's 4 years older than him, so she's considered an older sister to him. He's shocked by this, saying she doesn't look like it at all, and apologizes for his rudeness. He smiles and says from now on, he'll address her with the respect she deserves as an older sister. She feels shy being called that by someone with such a handsome face. Then he asks why she lives alone, hesitating because he thought the question might be rude. She wonders about the strangeness of it, and if it's uncommon for a woman to live alone in his world. He explains that while it's somewhat common in cities, most women at age 24 in his world are already married with kids, and asks about her status. He tells her he isn't married, but he was engaged before, and the engagement was broken off. When she asks why, he simply replies that they couldn't develop those kinds of feelings. He adds that he wants to marry someone he truly loves, so she calls him a romantic. He believes age has nothing to do with it, pointing out that their age gap is only 4 years. She explains she never thought about love or romance because she could barely get by juggling studies and a part-time job since she started living alone. She adds that she only lives alone because her university is far from her parents' house. Suddenly her phone rings, and she wonders who would call this late. After answering the call, she rushes outside to find her sister there, wondering why she's here. She quickly goes back inside and warns him not to come out no matter what, making him ask in confusion what she means. She emphasizes that he must stay put no matter what, and leaves. Outside, she coldly asks her sister what she wants. Her sister ignores the question and steps toward her. She hugs her tightly, claiming she came all this way just to see her little sister. She smells alcohol on her, so she pushes her away and confronts her angrily, wondering how she's still drinking even though she went through rehab. The sister asks Miri with a sly smile not to look at her that way, saying there's no need for that sharp glare. Then she grabs her hands and gets straight to the point, asking how much money she has and asking her to lend her 500,000 yen. She quickly backtracks, saying 300,000 would be enough, begging her and stressing it's the last time, while Miri doubts the money is actually for a job hunt. Miri asks why she's asking for money this time. Is it because of a man, plastic surgery, or gambling as usual? The sister gets angry and accuses her of being rude, saying she came all this way to visit her, and instead of being happy, she's treating her like a mere drunkard. Miri loses her patience and screams in her face, telling her to clean up her act and live a decent life, wondering how long she plans to live like this. Her sister slaps her hard across the face and orders her to shut up. Then she blames her, saying if her artistic debut in the past had succeeded, she wouldn't have to deal with her now, and that everything her life turned into is Miri's fault. Miri replies coldly, saying she's still blaming others as usual, which is why she'll never change. Miri leaves while telling her not to call her again and that she's no longer family. She warns her that she'll call the police if she suddenly shows up again. Her sister turns around in shock and anger, asking what she just said. Miri returns to her apartment to find Leandros waiting anxiously, having heard the screaming and worried about her. She tells him her sister is the second reason she lives alone, recalling past incidents where her sister caused trouble. She sits on her bed exhausted, saying this is nothing new and doesn't bother her anymore. He sits next to her and gently tells her that lying isn't good. He adds that he knows she's holding back her tears. She denies it, trying to hide her sadness. Then he shares his own tragic story, revealing his mother committed suicide on his 8th birthday. Because of his father's strict orders, he wasn't even allowed to cry at her funeral. Crying was forbidden for everyone in the Duke's house. He explains his father ordered him to never show his true feelings, to which she replies that tears aren't something to suppress. He touches his chest, explaining that bottled-up tears pile up and turn to stone over time, which is why he always feels like something is stuck in his chest. He wipes her tear and advises her to let her tears flow whenever she feels like crying, because he doesn't want her to end up like him. He smiles and points out that since he's from another world, he's like the perfect secret vault for her. If he ever goes back to his world, her secrets and the person who knows them will vanish with him, so she can pour her heart out without hesitation. She's touched by his words and breaks down crying in his arms as he comforts her. She feels a warmth she hasn't felt in a long time, and a sudden thought crosses her mind. She wishes all of this isn't just a dream, and that he stays in her world forever. The two sleep peacefully. A few days pass since then. He adapts to life in her world much faster than she expected, as they go buy a new phone and enjoy their time together. They go clothes shopping together, and when he puts them on, he looks like he was born and raised in this world. In the evening, they walk on the beach under the moonlight. She tells him she wanted to take him somewhere special, but since she's not an outdoor person, this is the only place she knows. He expresses his deep admiration for the place. He says the sea here is different from his world. It looks blue and calm, making her wonder if the ocean isn't the same everywhere. She confesses this is the place she comes to clear her mind, as looking at the horizon brings her peace. He thanks her for comforting him that day, so she replies that thanks to him, she hasn't felt the need to come here alone. He humbly replies that it was nothing. Then he reveals he has an identical twin brother, which is why he thinks he understands her feelings toward her sister. She remembers him mentioning being the second son, so he confirms they are identical twins, hard to tell apart from a distance. He adds that his brother doesn't live a respectable life, to the point that people call him a scoundrel. He explains that since their academy days, his brother was always in trouble with women due to his casual flings. The biggest issue is that his brother is proud of this reputation, which caused a lot of fights between them. She finds it hard to imagine someone else with the exact same face acting that way. He believes his brother's thirst for women's affection might trace back to their mother. She showered him with more love than she did with him. She asks him to look at her for a moment and takes a picture of him with her phone. When she shows him the picture, he's amazed, thinking he's trapped inside it. She explains to him that it's like a painting to make it easier for him to understand, so he compares it to a movie instead. She explains it's a way to capture a moment forever, and that she wanted something to remember him by after he leaves, then hands him the phone. He says if he returns to his world, he also wants to take a picture with her, but she replies that he'll probably forget her as soon as he goes back. He looks at her seriously and promises he could never forget her. Suddenly it starts raining. She notices the weather wasn't supposed to be rainy and suggests looking for shelter, but she turns around to find he has disappeared. A week passes since his disappearance, and life goes on as if nothing happened. She feels like he never existed in the first place, like everything was just a week-long dream. While in a bookstore, a book with a strange title catches her eye, The Song of the Sea and the Lark. She wonders about its content, and when she opens it, she's shocked by what she finds. She reads the name Leandros and wonders if she's losing her mind. She discovers the book describes him perfectly, the second son and heir of the Etesina family. She can't believe her eyes, wondering if he really came out of a book. It turns out the book is a 1,000-page romance fantasy novel. The novel contains all the names and places he mentioned, and the main character of the story is him. In the novel, he was destined to end up with Lillian Shaya's Eden, the daughter of the merchant guild master. She closes the book in shock. She knew he was from another world, but she never imagined it was the world of a novel. She tries to convince herself they're just words and she should forget them like a dream. She decides to stop thinking about it, as it would only complicate the life she has to live in reality. As she walks up the stairs to her home, a familiar voice calls her. She turns to find her sister, who doesn't smell like alcohol this time. She confronts her with bitter words, reminding Miri of her threat to call the police, accusing her of seeing her as pathetic and wishing she were dead. Miri is shocked by her sudden words while her sister grabs her violently. Her sister glares into her eyes, calling them condescending, acting like they know everything. She screams that those looks infuriate her, and that she never wanted to end up like this. Miri tries to calm her down, but her sister pushes her, screaming that she knows nothing about her. She loses her balance and falls down the stairs. Miri wakes up in a luxurious bed in an old-fashioned room. She looks around the room, which feels way too strange to be a hospital. Looking in the mirror, she's shocked to see a strange face she's never seen before. In a panic, she wonders what's happening to her face. She runs around the place and bumps into someone. She turns around to find his exact look-alike standing before her, but with a cold glare, so she calls his name in astonishment. Miri looks at her reflection in the mirror, completely baffled by what happened. She remembers the fight and the fall. She holds her head, feeling a sharp pain. Strange memories flood Miri's mind, belonging to a 22-year-old girl named Hazel Reeve, the only child of her parents from Laverton, making her wonder in confusion what these memories are. Through them, she discovers Hazel spent 3 years sorting mail, a dull and boring life. She continued this life until she got a recommendation letter and decided to change her job to become a maid for the Athena family. Miri realizes with shock that she is now inside the novel's world. She tries to remember if there was a character with her name in the novel, but she can't, assuming she was just a minor extra. She concludes that if this is true, the man she ran into earlier is definitely Leandros. She wonders about his coldness, as he looked much younger just a few days ago. She remembers her conversation with him when he was 19, and suddenly realizes that in the novel, he was 30 years old. This means 10 years have passed in his world since they parted. For her, only a week had passed, but for him, it's been a whole 10 years. After finishing her grueling work as a maid, she feels exhausted and needs some rest, but she gets scolded by the head maid for sleeping late, who threatens to fire her if she doesn't finish cleaning the library today, making her feel helpless since she isn't the real Hazel. She wanders through the mansion, amazed by the wide hallways, realizing this is where Leandros lives. She feels cold even though it's late March, noticing that the seasons in Laverton are a bit different from her world. She gets startled by her new reflection in the window. Still not used to it, she notices a light in his bedroom, concluding he can't sleep. She recalls the novel's events, where he became a knight at age 14. He fought 2 battles at 16 and 18, and at 26 he went to his final war to support an ally. In that war, the enemy commander sent him a gift to celebrate his victory. The gift was the severed head of his superior officer, pierced with arrows. Since then, he suffered from severe trauma and insomnia. She wishes she could be by his side to comfort him, but she stops herself. Suddenly, she sees a man who looks just like him kissing another woman. She's shocked and whispers his name. She realizes he's supposed to be in his room, which means this person isn't him. It turns out this is Silas Alfonso Therion Athena, the notorious scoundrel of high society and his twin brother. Miri quickly apologizes with a bow. The woman with him tells him not to mind, as others have seen them before. But Silas doesn't want anyone ruining their time together. He rudely orders her to leave, asking if spying is her hobby. She runs away, remembering how the novel mentioned the twins look exactly alike. She thinks to herself that it really looked like she saw him kissing another woman. The next day, the head maid tells her that one of the old maids had to return to her hometown. Because of this, Miri will have to fill in as his personal maid until they find a replacement, making her wonder why it had to be her. While serving him, she notices how much he has changed, having grown taller and broader shouldered. He has become a completely different person from the 20-year-old guy she knew. Silas suddenly walks in complaining of a headache and asks him about a painting he did 2 days ago. Leandros scolds him for bringing women to the mansion again, asking if he forgot his warning. Silas recognizes Miri and asks his brother if this is the maid who was spying on him last night. His brother coldly tells him that his paintings no longer have any value. He suggests he marry any woman and get out of the mansion. Miri feels the atmosphere becoming extremely tense and thinks Leandros went too far with his words. Silas replies sarcastically, asking what his own excuse for marriage is. He ignores him and orders him to leave, saying that wasting time with scum like him is pointless. Silas gets angry and confronts his brother, saying a stiff person like him has no right to call him scum. Miri wonders about the word stiff. Leandros turns angrily toward her and orders her to leave as well. She walks out, wondering if he's taking his anger out on her. She feels his dismissal was harsh, even though she knows the reason behind the brothers' feud. She remembers from the novel that after the previous duke's death and during his absence on the battlefield, Silas's debauchery ruined the family's reputation and left their estate financially ruined. Miri recalls that their relationship in the original novel wasn't this bad, wondering if it's because the story was told from the female lead Lillian's perspective and didn't mention many details. Suddenly, she notices a stranger in the library, wondering how long he's been there. She feels like she saw him in the original novel, and suddenly a strange light emits from him as she approaches him. Feeling pain, she screams in shock. The stranger tells her that this world is pretty shocking for a romance novel. Then he calls her by her real name, Miri Takahashi. She's completely shocked, while the man calmly asks about her identity, as she recognizes his silver hair and gray eyes. She whispers his name, Gideon, and he smiles because she knew his name. He tells her she must have realized he's the Idasina family advisor and a prophet. She remembers the story of the prophets from the novel, where a group of 12 people got lost at sea 200 years ago. A storm swallowed them up and they vanished. Then they reappeared 200 years later with ageless faces and mysterious powers. People called them prophets, and one of them, Gideon, had the ability to read minds through touch. Miri asks him if this is true. He confirms it with a smile, explaining that a single strand of hair is enough, but his power doesn't work through cloth. He tells her that in this world, she also possesses a special power as an otherworldly person, which is knowing the future, but she decides not to talk about it. She thinks about how she'll return to her world in a week and about Leandros. She tells Gideon she was shocked to find him a completely different person, even though he hadn't changed much. He reminds her that 10 years is a very long time, and it's more than enough time to forget a passing fling, so she agrees that 10 years have passed in the world of this book. She remembers that when she realized she was inside the novel, she went to his room to tell him the truth, but she couldn't do it. She wonders how she could have told him when he looked like a total stranger. She tells Gideon she needs to prepare to return to her world, as Lillian Shias is supposed to visit the mansion soon. She decides that a stranger shouldn't change the course of events in this world. He agrees with her, saying it's wise to disappear, leaving as little trace as possible. Then he suggests she chat with him whenever she gets the chance before her return, because he finds talking to her surprisingly fun. On her 6th day there, she feels like she has lived the real Hazel's life for a week. She spends her mornings taking care of him, her afternoons cleaning Silas's workshop, and in between, she tidies the study and talks with Gideon. She sarcastically thinks that the head maid must have been watching her since day one to assign her these tasks. She watches Silas draw, noticing his seriousness while working. She remembers the novel described him as a genius painter and a free spirit who gave up his succession rights early on. Suddenly, he calls out to her, "Hey, stalker," asking her to stop staring and come over to him. Miri walks toward him and he asks for her honest opinion. In her confusion, she notices up close that he looks a bit different from Leandros. She stammers and says he's very handsome. He laughs, saying he already knows that. Feeling incredibly embarrassed, she clarifies that she meant the painting and apologizes, saying her major is in science and she knows nothing about art. He suddenly grabs her hand, saying he didn't ask for a critique of the painting, just to tell him what she's thinking. Miri feels extremely confused, wondering what she should do since Silas's expectations are incredibly high. After a moment of thought, she tells him it's a beautiful painting, but she wouldn't want to buy it. He asks her why, and she replies that despite being well-made, it lacks charm. She explains her point, saying it's like the difference between a dark alley at night with a cat in it and another alley without one. She suggests he paint a red flower on one of the trees, but he objects, saying that kind of flower doesn't grow on those trees. She replies that she knows, but she meant he could add a touch of imagination. He takes her advice and adds the flowers to the painting, admitting the idea isn't bad. He asks for her name and age, so she introduces herself as Hazel Reeve, 20 years old. He surprises her by offering her a job as his assistant, saying he was just looking for one. She protests that she already has too much work, but he simply tells her she can pass half her duties to another maid. She tries to refuse again, claiming she knows nothing about art, but he refuses to listen. He corners her and asks with a sly smirk if she thinks she even has a choice. He decides to go tell his brother right away so he doesn't think he's hitting on his personal maid. He leaves, reassuring her that he'll explain everything to Leandros. She's left totally baffled, wondering how things got to this point. In a later scene, Leandros coldly kicks her out of the mansion and orders her off his property immediately. Back in the present, he summons Miri to his office but stays silent, making her even more nervous. He tells her his brother mentioned needing an assistant. After confirming that he asked for her help, he suddenly asks if she's married and she says no. Then he asks if she met his brother in this mansion, and she confirms it. She wonders what's up with all these questions. He warns her that if she gets pregnant by his brother, the child will grow up without ever knowing their real mother. She's shocked and has no idea what he's talking about. He throws a bag of coins at her and orders her out of his mansion immediately. He justifies his actions, saying that as the head of the family, he can't overlook his brother's reckless behavior, especially when it comes to messing around with a maid. She realizes he thinks she's just another maid trying to seduce a nobleman. He tells her he'll send her to whichever country she wants to go to, but she cuts him off and respectfully confronts him. She tells him that even with his power, he can't send her to where she truly wants to go. She clarifies that she and Silas aren't in that kind of relationship, and her heart already belongs to someone else. Then she excuses herself to leave. She breaks down in the hallway, blaming herself for getting so defensive. She comforts herself, thinking it's only natural he wouldn't recognize her after all these years. But his harsh words still hurt deeply, and she calls herself stupid. Back in his office, Leandros remembers her words and the sad look on her face. He rubs his face in frustration, brushing her off as an annoying woman. The next day, she wakes up still stuck in the novel world and wonders why she hasn't returned. Ever since their confrontation, his sharp glares have been making her super uncomfortable. She figures there must be a specific condition for her return, just like how he suddenly vanished from her world. While chatting with Gideon, he asks why she's so confident she'll be able to go back. She simply replies that since he managed to return, the same should apply to her. He tells the story of finding Leandros 10 years ago after he was reported missing in this world. They found him at the site of a carriage accident caused by a landslide, yet he was completely unharmed. He points out that the way she arrived in this world was totally different, so the conditions for her return must be different too. He reminds her that she was pushed from a high place, raising the possibility that she might actually be dead in her own world. She flatly denies this possibility. Suddenly, he informs them that Lillian Shias has arrived. Miri realizes she's finally about to meet the real female lead of the story. Lillian is described as the very reason this world was created. Watching her from the window, Miri feels completely insignificant compared to her. Gideon notices this and tells her that she's much more special to him, then touches her hair, making her ask him not to do that without permission. He smiles, saying it looks like something interesting is about to happen. Right then, Lillian's hat blows away and Leandros catches it, marking their very first encounter. She confirms with Gideon that this exact scene was described in detail in the novel. She senses danger, because Lillian's arrival means the story's plot has officially kicked off. She panics at the thought of never being able to go back, especially if she's already dead in her original body. In the middle of her anxiety, she cuts her hand, and Gideon notices she's bleeding. He reassures her not to overthink since nothing is set in stone yet, and bandages her wound. She wishes she knew what was happening to her other body so she wouldn't feel this anxious. He tells her that a certain someone might be able to help her, but he adds that she'll need a ton of money. He explains there's someone of his kind who reads the stars and might understand her situation in the other world. But this person is so rare that even the wealthiest elites can barely meet him, offering to send a letter but advising her not to get her hopes up. While serving tea to Leandros, she laments needing money even inside a book. He doesn't even look at her, which is exactly what she expected. But he notices the bandage on her hand. He coldly asks if she can even do her job properly while injured. She forces a smile and assures him it's just a minor cut that won't affect her work, reminding herself that this is a class society and she just has to endure it. He orders her to get out and stay away from him until her hand heals. She leaves, anxiously wondering if he's going to fire her. In Silas's workshop, she feels completely frustrated. She wonders where on earth she's going to get all that money, and she regrets not taking the money he offered her earlier. He notices her sighing and asks if something's bothering her, but she denies it. He tells her it's written all over her face and advises her not to lie. She insists it's nothing and pulls her hand away from him. Right then, she sees Lillian taking a stroll outside. He tells her name is Lillian Shias Eden, 24 years old, and playfully asks what she'll give him in return if he tells her more. She thinks to herself that he has nothing to offer, and she already knows why she's here. She recalls from the novel that her family's merchant company receives the Duke's backing in exchange for 5% of their sales. And because of her father's illness, she came in person to deliver the account books this time. Miri looks at Lillian and thinks she's such an elegant lady, and that the Duke surely sees that, and Silas agrees with her. She thinks to herself that Leandros will fall in love with her soon, just like in the original novel. He mocks her thought, saying his brother doesn't care about women at all and has broken off 3 engagements because of it. She screams internally, thinking this is just a classic novel cliché of the tortured male lead who finds his true love, and the only reason is that he hasn't met her yet. But realizing she can't say that out loud, she forces a smile, finding it pretty frustrating. Silas tells her his brother is eccentric because he claims he can't marry any other woman, unable to forget a girl he met in a dream 10 years ago, explaining that it's a famous tale about his years of lovesickness. And since she's new, it's normal she didn't know, leaving Miri in absolute shock. Silas recalls how that was the first time he realized someone could become lovesick over a dream, even though everyone thought he'd lost his mind after hitting his head. Miri is stunned and wonders if he's talking about her, remembering his words when he promised never to forget her. She excuses herself to Silas and suddenly calls his brother surprisingly romantic. He corrects her with a sly smile, saying she means crazy. She wonders if what he said is true, but decides not to care whether he remembers her or not. After all, she doesn't even know when she'll be able to return to her world. Suddenly, she finds Lillian standing right in front of her and realizes she accidentally broke a vase. Lillian tries to justify her mistake, but the words won't come out from sheer embarrassment. She offers to clean up the mess herself while Lillian wonders what to do. Miri smiles and tells her to leave it to her and go rest, admiring her sweetness. Lillian refuses and insists on helping, but Miri assures her it's her duty. Lillian apologizes and runs off in embarrassment. As Miri picks up the shattered pieces of the vase, she thinks she feels way more tired than usual. Leandros suddenly appears, looming over her. He walks right past her without even looking back, making her wonder if he's still holding a grudge against her. Annoyed, she wonders how his personality became so twisted. She suddenly realizes this exact scene was in the original novel, where Lillian apologizes after breaking the vase. But Leandros coldly walks past her, leaving the absolute worst first impression, and from then on they start hating each other. But in the end, they fall in love after seeing an unexpected side to each other. She realizes with shock that Lillian was the one who was supposed to clean up the mess. The story has completely derailed, and it's all her fault. The next day, Silas decides to take a day off since the weather is nice. Miri bets he's going out drinking again, but she's just glad she got the afternoon off. Suddenly, Lillian shows up looking for her. She thanks her for her help the previous night. She tells her she bought a new vase and hopes it's similar to the broken one. She apologizes and suggests putting it in its place, thinking the Duke won't even notice the difference. Miri laughs to herself because this scene was also in the original novel. But Leandros was the one who was supposed to receive the vase, so she decides she has to get things back on track. She suggests that Lillian give it to him directly. She makes up a lie that she ran into him while cleaning and that he already knows about the broken vase, assuring her he'd be happy to receive a gift from her. Lillian shyly asks if she really thinks so. Miri encourages her, saying she's never met anyone who rejects flowers. Lillian suggests tying a ribbon around the vase, and Miri agrees it's a great idea. After they get to know each other a bit, Lillian offers her a small gift as a token of appreciation. Miri refuses at first, but Lillian insists since she dragged her into her mess. Then she leaves to see the Duke, leaving her with the gift. She feels bad because she really wanted to avoid getting involved with her. She just can't let Leandros' fate change any further. She wants him to be happy. After all, he's the hero of this story. In the library, Gideon surprises her and asks what she's doing. She tells him she was cleaning because the person in charge isn't as efficient as her. She hesitantly asks if there's any response from his friend. He tells her it'll take a while since communication here isn't like in her world. He asks what she's hiding, and she realizes she slipped up. He asks her to let him look into her memories. He touches her hair and sees everything. He asks how events unfold in the novel, so she tells him that Leandros' reaction afterward is what matters. Lillian suddenly appears looking for her. She happily tells her that the Duke accepted her gift. Miri is shocked, because in the original story, Leandros rejected the vase. He was extremely cold to her, telling her not to wander around the mansion in the middle of the night. She blames herself, thinking Leandros believes she's the one who broke the vase, and decides she must make sure he doesn't get a bad impression of her. Meanwhile, Lillian expresses her happiness, saying the Duke is such a kind person. She reluctantly agrees, while Gideon calmly tells her she needs to get back to work now, and that he'll let her know as soon as a reply comes from his friend. He adds that it would be better if she left before causing any more disruptions to the original story, and she agrees. Suddenly, she hears Leandros' angry voice from his office refusing to do something. One of the Emperor's men tells him that His Majesty has ordered engagement plans to be made this year. Miri wonders who is with him, feeling nervous. The man tells him that if he doesn't, the marriage proposal to the second princess of the Frey kingdom will proceed. Miri deduces they're from the imperial palace. He refuses, saying he'll request an audience with His Majesty, but the man tells him the king won't see him unless he's informing him of his choice of a wife. He slams the table in anger, shouting that he's sick of hearing about this ridiculous duty. Miri worries and thinks about intervening. She whispers to herself to just forget the woman from his dreams. She recalls what Silas said about him, that he's weird, refusing to marry because he can't forget the woman he met in a dream 10 years ago. Leandros gets up and addresses the man, saying he still thinks he's lost his mind and is still bewitched by a succubus. He bitterly recalls the exorcism he underwent, where his limbs were bound and a cross was carved into his chest. Miri sees the scar on his chest in total shock. The man offers to bring someone else from the monastery. He suggests that Leandros rest his mind and body if being around women bothers him. But Leandros refuses, calling it ridiculous. He tells him he just wants him to realize how much he longs for a woman's touch. But Leandros asserts it's useless, as he gave everything to that woman 10 years ago. The man shouts that the woman named Miri doesn't even exist in this empire. He grabs him by his collar and orders him never to speak her name with his filthy mouth. He tells him he was right when they said he was possessed by a demon. He mockingly asks what they plan to carve into his body this time. He hears a noise outside and asks who's there. Miri rushes to Gideon and yells his name. He asks her in shock why she's in such a rush, and she confronts him, shouting that he knew all along that Leandros still remembered her. He apologizes for keeping it from her. He explains that as the family advisor and a friend of the late Duke, he couldn't let him delay his marriage any longer. Miri chews out Gideon for lying to her, but he reminds her that she saw the scar on Leandros' chest. Gideon explains that after Leandros returned, he suffered from severe fevers and hallucinations for 2 years. The late Duke summoned the most famous doctors to treat his son, but they all gave up. So in the end, he resorted to bringing in priests to perform exorcism rituals, even if it meant leaving a scar on his son's chest. Miri is horrified by how awful it was. Gideon justifies the Duke's actions, saying the Edicina family is highly influential, but with the Duchess's suicide and rumors of the son's obsession with a demon, the Duke had no choice. She angrily confronts him, wondering why he didn't stop them since he realized Leandros was telling the truth. He tells her that even if they told the truth about visiting another dimension, nobody would have believed them. He asks her if she herself would have believed such a story before experiencing it. He recalls those 2 painful years and how hard it was to watch Leandros suffer. She feels a sharp pain just hearing about him being branded, realizing he must have suffered so much more. She remembers her words to him about not holding back tears. She wishes she could just hold him and comfort him like she did back then. Gideon tells her that even after everything he went through, Leandros dedicated himself to finding a way to see her again. He asks if she knows how many emotions he had to suppress to live as the proud head of the Etosina family for 10 years, yet she's bound to leave one day. He begs her not to make him go through that same pain again if she truly cares about him. She sits alone, realizing Leandros' destiny is to marry Lillian and live happily, but she feels guilty for being a mere interloper in his fate, having already left deep scars on his body and mind, wondering what she should do. Suddenly, a white horse licks her face, making her scream. She wonders what a horse is doing in a place like this and who its master is. It nuzzles her, so she asks it to stop, then realizes it's trying to comfort her. She thanks it and decides to head back, admitting she was running away from reality. She promises to bring it a sugar cube next time, if she's still around. After she leaves, Leandros appears beside the horse, watching her walk away. Later, she desperately searches the storage room for something, realizing she lost the necklace Lillian gave her. She cries bitterly because that was her last hope, and if she doesn't find it, she won't be able to face her. She decides not to give up. This was the last place she stopped, so it must be here. Suddenly, the door opens and Leandros appears. Flustered, she tells him she was looking for her lost necklace. He approaches her, scaring her, so she asks him not to sneak up on her like that. He calmly tells her the necklace was near the well and hands it to her. She wonders how he got it, remembering she might have dropped it when she was with the horse. She notices he's drinking alcohol even though he's on insomnia medication, knowing it's bad for his health. She thinks about how she'll disappear one day, but she just can't stay quiet, confronting him and telling him that mixing medication with alcohol is terrible for his health. He calmly asks where she's from. He remembers her saying she has someone in her heart and asks where that person is from. She answers that he's from this empire, and that she feels like she's known him forever even though they just met. He asks if the wound on her hand has healed, and she says yes. He tells her he also has someone special in his heart, even though he can't see her anymore. Then he asks a hypothetical question. If the person you love dies one day, would you find someone new? She thinks that if Miri Takahashi were standing in front of him right now, she'd probably tell him she could never forget her love. But instead, she answers yes, if that's what she has to do, willing to lie as much as it takes if it means his happiness. She tells him that the pain of parting is healed by a new encounter, to which he replies curtly. After he leaves, she reflects on his words. A month passes, and Miri's first summer in this world approaches. She sees Silas sketching in the garden. It seems he and Lillian have grown pretty close in the meantime. She recalls from the novel that she becomes his muse. This means his painful, unrequited love is about to begin. He calls out to her, telling her to come over. She feels like she missed an opportunity to return, and that they need to spend some time alone so the story can progress just like in the novel. He shows her a painting and asks for her opinion, mentioning Lillian suggested lapis lazuli, but he plans to color it sky blue. She wonders about the need to use such an expensive material, but she doesn't want to embarrass Lillian, who asks for her input. She replies that it's a wonderful idea, thinking this will leave a good impression on him, but he calls her out, saying she's lying. He asks for her opinion on another painting he did 2 days ago. Lillian praises the painting, saying she can almost hear the lively conversations in it. He asks if she feels the same way. She hesitates, and he tells her that her lie is written all over her face. He jokes that she's the one with the real artistic taste. She defends Lillian, saying it's completely normal for people to have different opinions on art. He reluctantly agrees with her. Lillian thanks her and calls her super sweet. He laughs, saying she doesn't know her at all. Lillian defends her this time, so he asks if a polite person would tell him his paintings have zero commercial value. She emphasizes that that was just her way of praising him, leaving both of them baffled. She tells them to chat among themselves and calms down, while Leandros watches them from afar. At the dinner table, Lillian mentions that the Etosina Duchy is famous for its wine. Leandros confirms this, saying he was looking forward to the wine when it was decided to visit his father here. She tells him she's still new to drinking wine, so she doesn't know the difference between good and bad. She adds she heard the wine here is sweet as sugar, making him wonder about that. Miri notices the conversation isn't flowing at all, and their dynamic is just as awkward as in the original story. But the problem is Lillian is the only one talking. She feels like the scene is too painful to watch. She realizes the reason their dynamic is different from the original is because of the vase incident. Since nothing has started between them yet because of her, today's incident is her only chance to set everything straight. But she fears that it might hurt him again. She recalls Gideon's words that knowing the future isn't her fault and not to feel guilty, yet she still feels like everything is her fault. She decides she must bring things back to how they should be. She tells Lillian she realized she hadn't had a chance to serve food from her hometown, so she made a special request to the kitchen. She describes the beauty of the sea in her hometown at sunset and hopes he can visit it one day, while Miri remembers that the sea is their only and most painful memory. Leandros sets down his utensils and tells her he has no intention of going to the sea. Everyone is taken aback, so Lillian says that what she requested is now ready. As her dish is served, she tells him she ordered it specially from the chef, since she couldn't feed him from what's produced on their lands. In the dining room, as she serves a dish of grilled fish, Miri hopes Leandros will like it. But upon seeing the dish, his expression suddenly changes, and traumatic memories of the war flood back, including his commander's severed head pierced with arrows. He screams in absolute panic. He cuts his hand with the knife and orders everyone to stay away from him, threatening to kill anyone who gets close. Miri decides she shouldn't interfere any further. The person who should comfort the Duke right now is Lillian. That way, he'll open his heart to her, and things will finally go according to the original story. But she wonders how she can just stand by and watch him suffer like this. She rushes over to him and sits in front of him, trying to clean up the mess. She anxiously asks Lillian if she's all right, and she says yes. She expresses her greatest concern for the Duke, and Miri explains to her that his reaction is due to battlefield trauma. Lillian approaches him and comforts him, and he embraces her, crying. Miri watches the scene, convincing herself that this is for the best and how it's supposed to be. From now on, they'll gradually fall in love and reach a happy ending, and his trauma will become just a distant memory he can laugh about. She leaves the room, reassuring herself that her choice wasn't wrong. She sits in the garden under the rain. She thinks to herself that rainy days make everyone feel a bit sensitive. Silas suddenly appears holding an umbrella, saying it's the perfect night for painting. She follows him to his workshop where he's drinking, apologizing for sneaking out during her shift. Terrified she'll get fired if caught, he tells her to just say it was his order, then asks why she's bottling up her emotions. She apologizes and tells him she's having a hard time working because it's her first time as a maid. The Lord tells her that people have their reasons to be sad, and it's best to cry whenever you feel like it. Then he orders her to sit down, but she hesitates because her clothes are soaked. He insists she sit, saying she distracts him while standing. She thanks him and sits down, noticing a cut on his face. He tells her he got into a bar fight and was thrown out, noting he isn't treated like a noble in this area. He mocks himself, saying it's funny how he acts arrogant outside while his younger brother looks down on him at home, but she denies it. He asks her what happened in the dining hall. She tells him a dish with skewers was served, triggering the Duke's memories. He advises her to drink to calm down. She takes a big gulp straight from the bottle. He's surprised by her action, but she feels it really helped her calm down. He calls her weird, to which she responds with a question. He tells her she's different from the others. He tells her to forget what happened for her own safety. Then he points out she's the type to worry about things that haven't even happened yet and overthink for no reason, which surprises her that he knows. She jokingly asks if he's a prophet too, and he laughs and denies it. He explains he sees everything on her face because she's so transparent. He adds that he actually likes that quality about her. He asks her to sit so he can start painting her, telling her to pour out everything in her heart while he does. He reminds her she needs an excuse to justify slacking off and drinking alcohol. She calls him much more mature than she thought. Then she tells him that secrets are weaknesses, and it's not fair that she's the only one exposing her vulnerability. He playfully asks if she wants him to share something too, making her flustered. He agrees to tell her his secret if she tells him hers first. After hesitating, she confesses to him that she spent a night with someone she had just met. He's shocked and asks if she's joking, saying that's not a huge secret for two consenting adults. She sighs, since it took a lot of courage to say that, forgetting she was talking to Lord Silas. He asks if she's drunk and she denies it. He tells her to sit still and not move. She notices his passion for painting seems genuine. She thinks to herself that it's a secret, and there are many things she just can't tell him. He decides to tell her a secret, revealing that when he was 8 years old, he saw his mother hanging from the ceiling. He stops painting, and she asks him what he means. He shares his story. He called out to his mother over and over, but she didn't answer, and when he opened the door, he found her. He was the first to find her, but he ran away instantly. Ever since then, his father and brother blamed him. If only he had called for help or cut her down sooner, she might still be alive. And from that day on, he became known as the son who killed his mother. She remembers hearing this story from Leandros, but she didn't know he was the one who found her, wondering how he could talk about it so calmly. She realizes the brothers don't just share the same face, they share the exact same pain, just with different ways of coping with it. Yet they hate each other, just like her and her sister. He asks why she's looking at him that way, asking if she sees him as pathetic too. She answers that he's not pathetic at all. He was just a child, an 8-year-old kid who must have been completely terrified. He smiles and tells her she's the first person to ever tell him that, then says her painting is finished. She asks him to make a few changes. He thinks she wants him to paint her prettier, but she asks him to change the hair and face shape. She requests thick, wavy black hair and a rounder nose. He finds it strange, but does what she asks. She looks at the painting and says it's perfect. He warns her not to expect too much since he's a moody artist. She replies that she knows. All great artists are like that. He tells her she gets fun when she's tipsy, making her wonder if she really is. He warns her she might suffer from a hangover tomorrow. He tells her to sit down so he can finish up before it really hits her. She thinks about how he can smile like that, as he jokingly asks if he should make her cheeks rosier. She asks him not to make her look ugly, and he agrees. She thinks to herself that maybe he was the one who was drunk. The next morning, she wakes up feeling completely nauseous. To make matters worse, her memory of last night is super blurry. She vows never to touch alcohol again, realizing Hazel has zero tolerance for it. She remembers she needs to help Leandros get dressed. While helping him, the button on his cravat snaps off. As she tries to fix it, she remembers what happened last night with Silas. The Duke coldly tells her there's no need, which she finds annoying. Lillian Shias arrives at that exact moment. She apologizes for her early visit and tells him she wanted to apologize for yesterday, saying everything was her fault. Miri notices Lillian looks like she didn't sleep a wink last night, but knowing her personality, she isn't surprised. Leandros reassures Lillian not to worry, saying she didn't know the situation and there's no need to apologize. She insists that she's the one who should apologize for startling him yesterday. He invites her for tea in the garden, pointing out that the roses are in full bloom. She happily agrees. Miri realizes that yesterday's incident brought them closer, and even though she can't see Leandros' face, she's absolutely sure he's smiling. Suddenly, Miri remembers the painting she asked Silas to change and realizes she's in deep trouble. She blames herself for going too far while drunk, fearing what'll happen if Leandros sees that painting. She looks for Silas, who said he'd be painting outside. She finds him and asks him to throw away the painting of the woman he drew yesterday. She tries to convince him that it won't sell and would just be a waste of time and materials. Turns out Leandros is right there, wondering if Silas brought another woman to the mansion. Miri panics and denies it. He coldly asks her what she meant by painting a woman. She freezes, totally lost on how to answer. Silas steps in and asks him what business he has with his assistant. Leandros mocks the idea of Silas having an ally in the mansion. Silas tells his brother not to pick a fight, but he insists on knowing the truth about the painting. Silas denies bringing any woman, but he doesn't believe him. He accuses her of defending him and asks how close they really are. He accuses them of making fun of him, especially since she insisted they had no relationship. He sarcastically asks if her lover died, causing this sudden change in attitude. Silas gets mad and accuses Leandros of spying on him and trying to drive a wedge between him and his assistant. He snaps back that this wouldn't be necessary if it weren't for the trouble he causes, which ruined the family's reputation. He mocks his words, saying the one who ruined the family's reputation is the one who's still blind despite the cross engraved on his chest. Leandros gets furious and demands to know what he just said. Miri tries to clear up the misunderstanding, insisting that Silas came back alone. Silas is surprised by his sudden calmness and says he's glad they avoided a fight. He claims he behaved well last night, challenging him to check with whoever is watching him. Then he explains that Miri actually drew a woman, but she was just from her imagination. As he describes the features, black hair and a round nose, she realizes he's describing her, and he calls his brother obnoxious as usual. Miri feels like there was no need for all this harshness. Leandros and Miri exchange tense looks. In his mind, Miri's image overlaps with his old memories of her. He remembers her name, Miri Takahashi. He sighs, recalling a memory that never fades. He remembers coming back 10 years ago, thinking at first it was just a dream. He remembers taking her picture, wanting to remember her, and how realistic the dream felt, the warmth of her breath that day, and how her presence became clearer over time. Gideon snaps him out of his thoughts, asking if he's tired. He tells him he was thinking of something else, so Gideon informs him that Lord Thanatos is waiting for him. He asks if he touched him, and he confirms he shook his bare hand. He figures Thanatos came to pass on the Emperor's wish for Leandros to marry, but there's also another official business. Later, Leandros meets with Thanatos. He treats him coldly, saying he doesn't recall them being close enough to exchange such greetings. The Emperor's shadow explains he only asked because he looked tired. He informs him of the pilgrimage schedule, which was moved up a week earlier than last time, and they expect heavy snowfall. Leandros comments that the weather gods aren't smiling on humanity. It's explained that the Emperor goes on a national pilgrimage every 4 years to inspect the borders and assert his authority. The journey takes at least 3 months, and it'll be even longer this year because of the snow. Thanatos also tells him His Majesty invited Princess Cassandra and asks him to prepare accommodations for her. He assures him he knows what this means. Leandros understands that the Emperor wants to settle his marriage before the pilgrimage. Gideon comments that the Emperor has run out of patience. He remembers that Princess Cassandra was his second fiancée. She was also a distant relative, a childhood friend, and a classmate, and he heard she stayed single ever since their engagement was broken off. Thanatos offers to inform His Majesty if he has another lady in mind for marriage. In the garden, Miri trips. Leandros remembers how this maid reminds him of his sister Miri, even though they look nothing alike. He tells him there's no such person and that he'll make sure there are no delays in the schedule, thinking to himself that he left his heart with her. An image of the unfinished drawing of his lover, whom he'll never see again, pops into his mind. In her room, Miri reads a letter from Hazel's worried mother. The mother expresses her worry and asks her daughter to take care of herself. Miri realizes she completely forgot that Hazel actually has parents. She thinks about her mother's kindness, fearing she'll find out the truth if she replies to the letter. She wonders how her own parents are doing. She decides not to overthink it. She remembers Gideon mentioning a prophet who could help her get back. She decides to put the letter aside since replying to it is the real Hazel's business. She feels guilty that her mother will worry. She wonders if she can send something else instead of a letter. She hears Lillian arguing with some men about her design. She tells them she only ever hears what pleases her, so they can't be trusted for honest advice. Miri realizes everyone is struggling in their own way. The guild men can't be blunt with her because they've known her since childhood. She tries to pass by unnoticed, but she calls out to her. Lillian asks her where she's going. She tells her she's on a short break. She grabs her hand and asks her to take a look at her designs, praising her great taste. She gets flustered by the request, but Lillian insists. She remembers from the novel that she faces failure at this time, creating a rift between them. But she later uses this experience to achieve massive success. She wonders if she should intentionally give her bad advice to make her fail, just to keep the story on track. Miri feels super guilty and wants to help Lillian. She thinks that if she didn't fail and things went well from the start, it would be better for Leandros too. She praises her design, calling it beautiful, but she adds that it lacks specificity regarding the target customer and what's actually being sold. She explains that the dress has a corset and laces, meaning it can't be worn without help. So it's a design targeting wealthy people who have servants. As for the other dresses, they're light and easy to move in, but wealthy women would never choose them. She straight up asks her whether she's targeting commoners or the wealthy. She's also unclear about what exactly she wants to sell, whether it's hats, dresses, or shoes. She admits she hadn't thought about it that much. So Miri tells her that hard work alone isn't enough in the business world. She adds that if she takes it lightly, she could go bankrupt in an instant, which is what happened to her own family's business too. She immediately apologizes for overstepping her bounds. She fears she sounded like an insolent maid and might get punished for it. But Lillian thanks her warmly, assuring her that this was exactly the advice she needed. She praises her sharpness and asks for her help in the future. Miri suddenly remembers she has to help Silas, so she apologizes and rushes off. The other looks after her, wishing they could become friends, but feels like she isn't opening up to her. As she walks, Miri blames herself for missing the chance to ask Silas what he did with the painting he drew of her, after everything that happened with Leandros. She remembers how he vanished, leaving her only a note asking her to burn everything. She can't find Gideon either, feeling like nobody's around when she needs them. The white horse suddenly appears, and she's happy to see it. She tells him she's been carrying sugar cubes for him all this time and gives them to him. She notices there are no saddle marks on him, realizing he's deeply loved. He nudges her with his head, causing her to fall. She tells him that was the last piece of candy. Leandros suddenly appears standing over her, so she asks him if he was watching her, and she's shocked to realize he's the horse's owner. Flustered, she tells him she was just feeding him sugar. At that moment, Gideon shows up and calls her Miri, which catches him by surprise. She gets totally flustered and doesn't know what to do. Leandros utters her name in confusion. She turns to Gideon for help. Gideon asks him if he's been drinking, warning him about how strong the sun is. Miri is surprised by his lack of reaction. He tells Leandros they need to head to the capital before the pilgrimage, and that he needs to stop drinking alcohol and take his medicine. He replies that he doesn't like being lectured. He accuses him of still thinking he's a kid, even though a 100-year-old would be considered a child to him. He asks him to ask him one thing, asking him not to say that he'll be coming along on the pilgrimage too. Gideon laughs and says that would be elder abuse. Leandros tells him to stop calling her by her name out loud. He sighs and asks her what happened. Leandros finds it weird. How could he call her by that pet name? Miri asks Gideon if Leandros named his colt after her, completely shocked. She realizes he actually named the horse after her. Gideon explains he didn't mean to name it after her, but the colt was a gift from him. He wanted him to pour his affection for her into the colt to ease his loneliness. But after whispering her name in front of it over and over, the colt started believing its name was Miri. He jokingly adds that for it to come, she has to call it Big Sister Miri. She goes crazy and screams inside her head, "Leandros, you idiot." He asks if she's okay, and she accuses him of holding back his laughter. She asks him why they're heading to the capital now if the pilgrimage is in the winter. He explains that once the pilgrimage schedule is announced, the lords of each region visit the capital by the emperor's order to negotiate taxes in advance. He suddenly tells her he received a reply from his friend. Miri reads the letter, which expresses the writer's surprise at the existence of someone from another world. He admits his interest is piqued, but payment is a different story. He won't show off his abilities for free and expects full compensation for his travel time. He adds that according to a divine revelation, he'll arrive around the beginning of autumn. She grumbles about the greed of an immortal being asking for a fee. Gideon tells her this person values his ability more than any other prophet, and assures her she'll understand what kind of person he is when she meets him. He reassures her that once his friend understands her situation, he won't ask for an unreasonable amount, so she jokingly asks if they're in cahoots. He laughs and denies it, then reminds her that the Emperor's right hand came to see Leandros, which isn't good news for her. She asks him about Princess Cassandra, remembering that this is the first time her name has been mentioned since Chapter 3. He confirms this, telling her she's scheduled to arrive before autumn. Miri concludes that the mansion will be seeing a lot of visitors by the end of summer. He asks if she's a rival to Lillian, and she says no. She explains that she starts off as a rival, but as the story progresses, she becomes an ally. He curiously asks if there's a special chapter about him, since he was an important supporting character. She tells him she doesn't know. She only read the scenes he was in, and there are plenty of events she can't remember. She reminds him that someone told her not to interfere in this world. He calls her heartless, but she thinks to herself that she still remembers a few things. She remembers that in the original story, Leandros got all the romantic moments while Gideon got nothing but hard work, and she decides to keep this discovery to herself until she returns to her world. She thinks this will be a small punishment for him hiding the fact that he remembers her. She asks if he really wants to know his secret, suggesting he pay his own price for it, so he backs down. In the library, Miri is dusting. Leandros suddenly appears behind her, so she says they need to air out the place a lot from now on, because summer. Humidity can ruin the books. She asks him to hand her a book under the ladder, thinking he was Gideon. She reminds him that she forgot to ask about his reply to that letter. She panics when she sees the person standing behind her is Leandros, and slips off the ladder. He catches her smoothly before she hits the ground. He asks if she's okay, telling her he didn't know she had a knack for startling people. He asks if it's her habit to put her hands on his chest every time he catches her. Flustered, she denies it. She thanks him for saving her and bashfully steps away. He asks if that's all the thanks he gets, making her even more flustered as she mixes up, "I'm sorry" and "thank you." He jokingly asks if she can't take a joke. He touches the shelf next to her with his hand, bringing it up to her face, pointing out that the shelf is covered in dust. Miri is surprised the shelf is dusty, since she's sure she wiped that spot. Leandros asks her why she doesn't just clean the places she can reach instead of climbing ladders. She obediently answers, and he leaves the library. Outside, she feels a sudden chill and wonders if she's catching a cold. One of the men from Lillian's guild, named Archer, surprises her and says he's been waiting for her. She thinks he came to discuss her designs again and suggests postponing the talk. He tells her he just wanted to thank her. He asks if she has time to talk. He explains that she's had a clear dream since childhood, but no one in the guild could bring themselves to be harsh with her. It wasn't out of fear of hurting her. They were afraid she'd give up on her dream. So Miri advises them to hire someone new with experience to help her succeed. He's shocked by her words, and she adds that if a dream can be shattered by just a little criticism, it wasn't worth much in the first place. She realizes she's no kid, but a 24-year-old adult woman, so no wonder she's been struggling because of them. She turns down his thanks, saying she only intervened because the situation was frustrating, then excuses herself to leave. Suddenly, she remembers the novel mentioned he has a teenage daughter, and he used to run a souvenir shop before joining the guild, making him a gift expert. She asks if she can consult him on something. She tells him she received a letter from her parents and wants to send a gift instead of replying. She asks for his recommendations for a gift to reassure them she's doing well. He suggests a tea set, mentioning he brought one as a gift for the Duke but bought two by mistake, offering her the extra one. She hesitates to accept it since it's expensive. He thinks for a moment, then proposes a deal. He asks her to work as her advisor until they find someone new, as she was thrilled with her advice. She didn't expect things to go this way. Lillian praises her, saying she's great with numbers too and can do anything. She plays it down, saying she only knows a little. She finds this job suits her way better than cleaning, since she did plenty of bookkeeping in her past life. Silas, who planned to take the day off, watches her and tells her to focus on her work. She grumbles that he takes a day off almost every day, but he ignores her. She thinks to herself that he just does things his own way, but she's glad he looks better than last time. Suddenly, her stomach hurts and she thinks she might be catching a cold. Silas asks her which academy she attended, pointing out that her math method is unusual. She panics. The math in this world is different from her world. She answers that she doesn't think she went to an academy. She makes up an excuse that her memory is fuzzy because it's been so long. Lillian asks if she has a fever from looking at numbers, and she denies it, but she starts coughing, making her worry and ask for her age. She tells her she's 24. She finds out they're the same age and gets excited. Silas notes that's weird, since she said before she was 22. She tries to fix it, saying she's positive she's 22. He touches her forehead and confirms she has a fever. She admits she feels a bit sick. They both insist she go rest, assuring her he'll make sure her pay won't be docked. She realizes she can't focus on work right now as her headache gets worse. She agrees to take a break. Suddenly, she sees double of Silas. She feels something is totally wrong. She wakes up to find her sister beside her. She asks if she's really her sister, and she confirms it. She smiles, saying she's her only one in the world. Then her expression shifts, and she accuses her of looking down on her. She shoves her hard, making her fall. Miri screams internally, begging her sister not to leave her alone. She remembers how she used to rely on her in the past. A week has passed since she fainted. She passed out because her period coincided with her cold. She remembers dreaming about someone but can't recall who. Silas asks if she's still sick. She tells him she's just a bit tired, so he advises her to eat well. He tells her she's gotten so thin compared to when they first met that the wind might blow her away. He explains he noticed because he draws people for a living. She thinks that when he smiles like that, he looks exactly like Leandros, which bugs her. She realizes her relationship with Leandros isn't great, as he still gives her contemptuous looks and annoys her with his weird pranks. And it makes her want to pinch his handsome nose. She's grateful he saved her, but wonders if his presence there was just a coincidence. Or did he realize her identity that day? Silas grumbles that his brush isn't moving today, maybe because the weather is too nice. He asks her to come over to him. They watch his brother and Lillian strolling in the garden, and Miri notices they've gotten really close. Silas is shocked, never having seen his brother smile like that before, wondering if there was something in his breakfast. He's not the type to smile over a simple walk with a woman. He gets close to her, says this makes no sense, then calls her Hazel. He calmly tells her there's a caterpillar on her shoulder. She panics and asks if he's joking. He tells her not to move and that he'll remove it. He takes off the caterpillar and checks that it's not poisonous. He asks if she's wearing perfume. Surprised by the question, she anxiously denies it, asking if she smells weird. He tells her she smells nice, then asks how long she's going to keep holding on to him, pointing to her hand on his chest. He tells her it's fine to hold on to him, but not to do it with anyone else. She remembers him saying something similar, wondering if she does it unconsciously. She notices he hasn't brought any women around lately, so he tells her he's just too busy with work. Meanwhile, Leandros watches them from below, his face twisted with anger at the scene. Later, Miri asks Silas to send the tea set for her. She's surprised, realizing she didn't expect it to be so huge, as she imagined something smaller and apologizes to Silas for it. Miri tells Silas she wanted to send the set quickly but didn't know how. She offers him money for the favor, but he refuses, saying he offered to help because he knows what she's going through and there's no need to worry about money. He asks for the address instead, so she gives it to him. He asks if it's her home address and if she grew up by the sea, and she says yes. Miri thinks to herself that the address she wrote might not be the real Hazel's home, since she only guessed it because the letter came from Cecil Port. She realizes she barely knows anything about the real Hazel whose body she borrowed, as she was too focused on the novel's main characters. She wonders where the real Hazel is right now, since she's the one controlling this body. Later, Miri finds Lillian in the garden with a little kid. Lillian introduces the boy as Mars, who delivers account books for the Brandmeier Trading Company. Miri welcomes him, and Lillian tells her she brought some sweets from town. She offers her a piece, and Miri tastes it with pure joy. She realizes that ever since she came here, she's eaten nothing but lukewarm soup and hard bread every day, completely forgetting the taste of sweetness. Lillian expresses her happiness that she liked the candy. Miri asks her about the flowers she's holding. She tells her the Duke gave them to her as thanks for the vase, and adds that the donuts were from him too. Miri asks if they went out together. Lillian confirms it, explaining he gave her so much she couldn't finish it alone. So, he told her to share it with everyone at the company. Miri takes this as a good sign. Lillian laughing thanks to Leandros means the story is finally back on its original track. Suddenly, Lillian asks Miri what she thinks of the Duke as a man, and if she's in a relationship with Lord Silas. Silence falls between them as Miri tries to process the question, totally shocked by how blunt it is. She wonders how she even got that idea. She clarifies that she doesn't know why she'd think that, since they're just master and maid. She was trying to explain what she saw, but stops when she notices a kid is sitting with them, and whispers that she saw them kissing in Silas's workshop. Earlier, Lillian was explaining to the Duke that Miri had helped her a lot lately and was super nice. But she noticed the Duke was watching Silas's workshop. Lillian thinks the Duke believes something's going on between them too. Miri intensely denies it. She tries to calm Lillian down, assuring her it's a misunderstanding. She blurts out that she actually likes someone else. Lillian apologizes, and Miri reassures her she wasn't romantically involved with Silas. And she remembers that the author gave Lillian a specific trait. She curiously asks who Miri likes, and Miri realizes she fell right into a trap. She finally escapes Lillian's pressing questions. Miri heads toward the late Duchess's bedroom, but she runs into the Duke on the stairs leading to the room. She recalls Leandros' words about his mother passing away on his 8th birthday. Realizing how much he loved her, she sighs, thinking Leandros misunderstood her too. So she tells him Silas was just removing a bug, and she never touched him. The Duke asks if she's heard the rumors about the master of this house going crazy when he was 20, and how he fell in love with a woman he met in a dream. He asks if she has anything to say. Miri denies ever hearing the rumor before. Leandros smiles coldly, figuring it's no surprise she hasn't heard it since she's new. He warns her that he'll let it slide this time since it's a misunderstanding, but he'll never allow her to become Silas's lover. Miri feels like his words weren't a confirmation, but a test. She comforts herself that it's fine. He hasn't discovered the truth yet. The Duke sits in his room, remembering when he saved Miri from falling, and wonders why he keeps seeing the real Miri in Hazel. Memories of the sea and falling into the water overlap in his mind. He wonders why their images keep overlapping, in every small daily moment and in every passing expression. He wonders if he's so desperate that he's creating illusions himself. He remembers her crying face and Hazel's face, but he suddenly notices something catching his attention, moving outside. While Miri finishes her work in the library and feels relieved, Gideon surprises her, and she asks what he's doing up this late. He gives her a new letter from his friend. Gideon tells her his friend arrived in the Levitane Empire earlier than expected, and if Leandros agrees, he'll be at the mansion within 10 days. Gideon tells her she'll be saying goodbye soon, earlier than they anticipated. He calls her Miss Miri with concern, but she thanks him for letting her know. She remembers she forgot the night watch patrol and leaves. Miri sees the flowers Leandros gifted Lillian displayed in a vase, and remembers Lillian's happy words, and recalls Gideon's warning not to make Leandros suffer again. She thinks this is good, as the two are getting closer, and she decides she needs to ask Gideon's friend for help to return to her world, because that's how it should be. She passes by Leandros' room. She finds Lillian outside his room. She wonders what she's doing here at this hour. Lillian tries to justify her presence, quickly saying it's not what she thinks. Lillian tells her she heard a strange sound from the Duke's rooms on her way back to her own room, so she came to check. The sound felt like someone was being strangled, shocking Miri.